Hey guys, it's Miss Kerwin, and I'm going to read you the story for the week that is called The Children Who Escaped the Nazis. And the subheading says, during a dark time in history, a daring rescue operation saved the lives of thousands of Jewish children. This is a true story about something that really happened during World War II. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit and go over here. And we'll get started on this first page. It says, on a chilly April morning in 1939, 14-year-old Laura Sulzbacher sat alone in an enormous train station in London. All around her, people were talking, but Laura didn't know what they were saying. She didn't speak a word of English. Laura clutched her only possessions, a suitcase filled with clothes and photographs, and her accordion, a musical instrument she loved to play. She wondered what was going to happen to her. Only a few days earlier, Laura's parents had said they were sending her away from home, from everything and everyone she knew and loved. Germany, where Laura had been born and always lived, had become too dangerous for Jewish people like them, and it was clear that more terror was coming. There was no escape for Laura's parents, but they had been given the chance to send Laura to England, where they hoped she'd be safe. Can you imagine that? She had to leave her parents. Her parents were going to stay in Germany, but she had to leave and go to a country without them that she'd never been to. Wow. As Laura shivered in the station that cold April morning, her mind swirled with worry and fear. A British family had volunteered to take her in, but Laura had never met them. She didn't even know their names. What sort of people would they be? What would become of her family? And what kind of life would she have in this strange new land? Laura wanted to be brave, but she fought back tears. Why did her parents have to send her away? Next page. A storm of hatred. Oh, I'm going to just caption first, actually. It says, a time of horror. September 16, 1935, Adolf Hitler, standing in the car, so he's here in the car, salutes Nazis as they march in a parade in the city of Nuremberg, not far from where Laura lived in Firth. On the flags is the swastika, a symbol of Nazi hatred. This is it, the swastika symbol right here, and that means the horrible Nazi hatred. All right, so Jewish people had always been a small minority in Germany and other countries in Europe. Like people of all religions, Jewish people had their own customs and beliefs. For this reason, many Germans viewed them with intolerance and suspicion. Prejudice against Jewish people, known as anti-Semitism, had been a problem in Germany and all of Europe for centuries. So people were mean to them and kind of just, I don't like you because you're Jewish, all that junk. But beginning in the early 1930s, when Laura was a little girl, prejudice against Jewish people in Germany exploded into vicious hatred and violence. In 1933, a man named Adolf Hitler became head of the government. At the time, Germany was still suffering from a humiliating defeat in World War I, which had ended in 1918. In the years since, German people had faced years of growing poverty, unemployment, and hunger. Hitler and his Nazi party gave Germans someone to blame for these problems: the Jewish people. In hateful speeches, Hitler told vicious lies that stirred up old prejudices. The Nazis passed laws that robbed Jewish people of their rights and treated them like they weren't even human. So mean. Night of violent attacks. Jewish people were fired from their jobs and forbidden to vote. Friends turned cold and cruel. Some shouted vile insults at their Jewish neighbors or even threw stones at them. Signs appeared in windows of restaurants and shops that said, "Jews not wanted." Jewish people were beaten in the streets. By the time Laura was 12, she could no longer go to her school. She was forbidden to swim in public pools or go to movies or even walk through public parks just because she was Jewish. Then, on the night of November 9th, 1938, in cities and towns across Germany, Austria, and parts of Czechoslovakia, large mobs organized by the Nazis unleashed terrible violence. Jewish homes, schools, and synagogues were burned into the ground. Jewish stores were destroyed. This night of violent attacks came to be known as Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass. After that, Laura and her parents accepted the terrible truth. Germany, the only home they'd ever known, was no longer safe. They needed to get out. I'm going to look at this caption here that looks like a map. And it says, in 1942, Germany, Italy, and Japan fought together and were known as Axis countries. Against them were allied countries, Britain, the US, the Soviet Union, and more. So this is showing a map of where we are. This takes place in Germany, but she's going to move over here to England. The children. As news of Kristallnacht spread, people around the world were horrified. Yet few countries were willing to open their doors to refugees trying to escape Hitler. But in England, a group of Jewish and non-Jewish people were determined to help. They figured if they couldn't get entire families out, maybe they could at least save the children. They asked the British government to take action. The British government voted in favor of helping young Jewish refugees. They created a complex plan to rescue Jewish children. This operation would be called the Kindertransport. Kinder means children in German. Under this plan, Jewish children younger than 17 could receive special permission to come to Britain, where they would be placed with families or would live in groups in small hotels. In England, hundreds of people offered to help these young refugees. Now, parents like Laura's faced an agonizing decision. Send their children to live with total strangers in a far-off country, or keep their families together and try to survive Hitler's terror. What a horrible decision to have to make. Saying goodbye. On December 1st, 1938, just a few weeks after Kristallnacht, the first train of the Kindertransport left Germany for England. By early 1939, nearly 300 children were arriving in England every week. On April 14th, 1939, Laura's mom and dad told her they had arranged a place for her on the Kindertransport. Laura would have only 4 days to get ready to leave. The rules were strict. Laura was allowed 1 suitcase, 1 small bag, and 10 marks. That's about $70 today. So marks is what they called money. The Nazis didn't want anything of value to leave Germany. At the train station, Laura's parents insisted they would see her again. As the train hauled itself out of the station, all Laura could do was stare out the window until her mom and dad faded from view. Ugh, so hard. A new life. When Laura arrived in London, a couple appeared and introduced themselves as Mr. and Mrs. Schreiber. Laura barely understood a word that they said, but she went with them to their home in the city of Lincoln. The Schreibers and the people of Lincoln did their best to help Laura. The Schreibers gave her a bed to sleep in and food to eat, and they sent her to school to learn English. Their 17-year-old son quickly accepted Laura as a sister, and the two became close friends. At schools, kids invited Laura to play cricket, one of England's most popular sports. Laura didn't know the rules, but the kids made sure she knew when to run. Despite these kindnesses, Laura was lonely and homesick. She wasn't used to English stews and meat pies. Ugh. Even as her English improved, school was difficult, and she struggled to communicate with her classmates. And most of all, Laura missed her parents. She held out hope that they would be able to escape to England too, but life in Germany was getting more grim by the day. Her parents wrote often. In one letter, her father told her to be strong. Keep your head up high, he wrote. And then over here is a picture, and then there's a picture down here. It says the Kindertransport. The experiences of the Kindertransport children varied widely. Some were taken in by kind families. Others were put to work as household servants or sent to work on farms. And this on the left is where Laura with her mom and dad in Germany. Pushing forward. On September 1st, 1939, horrific news arrived. Germany had invaded Poland. Britain was joining with other countries in Europe to fight Hitler. World War II had begun. The start of World War II put an end to the Kindertransport in Germany. For Laura and the other children, the dream of seeing their families was crushed. Mail stopped, though Laura was able to get bits of news about her parents through a relative in Switzerland. Through the difficult years of war, Laura tried to make the best of life in England, even as bombs from German warplanes rained down. She learned to sew while working in the dress shops the Schreibers owned. She also took art classes at night. After all, this is what her parents had wanted for her, to live her life and to thrive. When Laura turned 18 in 1943, she said goodbye to the Schreibers and joined the British Army. I felt I was saying thank you to the England for saving my life, she would later say. Laura was sent to London and given a job as a driver. She made many new friends. For the first time, she felt like she truly belonged. The people on the left, the people on the right, she recalled, we were all the same. The end of the war. In 1941, the U.S. joined the fight against Germany. The war raged on for 4 more years until finally, in May 1945, Germany surrendered. After the war, hundreds of Kindertransport children found one or both of their parents, but most never saw their parents again. Few Jewish people in Nazi-occupied countries survived. Tragically, Laura's parents were killed in a Nazi death camp. They were among the some 6 million Jewish men, women, and children across Europe who were murdered by the Nazis. This horror would later be known as the Holocaust. Today, the Kindertransport is remembered as a remarkable feat. During a time of violence and hatred, ordinary people in England had banded together to help children from a foreign land. The lives of some 10,000 children were saved. Despite everything that she lost, Laura always looked back on her life with a sense of gratitude. Carrie, you're too loud. After the war, she had a son, 3 grandchildren, and a marriage as happy as her parents had been. I think I'm very lucky to be here, Laura said. I've had a lovely life. So kind of a sad story because she lost her parents, but a happy story because she got out and was able to get away from the war.